McDermott get married this weekend. Congrats, Jennifer and Pierre. We know you're sandbagged this one, but we'll take it as homecoming. And I have Justin Garr from KFAN, and of course from 247, Ryan Burns joining us. Fellas, let's talk about this atmosphere. Normally when I get here, I don't have to deal with traffic. At 8:15, there was traffic on the highway exiting. How is this campus all ready to start for this homecoming game versus Purdue?
It's so funny you start there because there's something about the fraternity houses and sorority houses on University Avenue. Tailgating at 7:45 when I was rolling in, it just warms your heart, right? The sights and smells of college football. They're dancing out there on their little porches, whatever it is. Be safe, kids. All right, it's a marathon, not a sprint. Twin Cities Marathon weekend this weekend too, by the way, so be careful. But it's great. This is what college football is supposed to be.
It's supposed to be like this. I mean, what else is there to say? We're pulling in on University, as Justin said. It is packed. I mean, you look around here, maroon and gold everywhere, which we weren't sure if this was going to be a fully executed stripe out. I would say this, from walking around campus, from looking around, there's a lot of excited people here today.
Yeah, we're not going to talk about the people walking by us in plaid right now. We're going to deal with the show. Michigan State, that was on paper to start the season. That was the toughest matchup we all thought for Minnesota early. They handled them. I mean, I don't think they scored till like the fourth quarter. They were like really efficient in the red zone. When I go over the stats, we'll go over that later. They are still like #1 in the nation. What did that Michigan State game do as a statement for this team?
Well, I think it allowed them to start dreaming big, and it allowed people, I think, to invest and say, okay, maybe this is going to be one of those years that they had in 2019. There's still a long way to go. I mean, it was only a week ago where people were saying, oh, they haven't really played anybody. Now people are telling me they're booking flights to Indy and Pasadena. Like, everybody chill. All right, we got a lot of games going, but they've gone from being the youngest team in America 4 or 5 years ago to now maybe the oldest and most mature. And Saturday was a complete mature effort, starting obviously with Taryn Morgan. Mo Ibrahim obviously had a great day as well, but it was just a mature effort all around.
And you bring up Mo Ibrahim. Mo Ibrahim sets the record for Daryl Thompson, or beats Daryl Thompson's record out. PJ talked about it on the PJ Flex show, but what does that mean for Mo, a guy coming off an Achilles injury, to now put himself in the record books?
I mean, I think we're going to be talking about here in a few weeks, putting his number up on the Huntington Bank. I mean, I think we should be talking about retiring it here in a few weeks. He does it on 12 less games than Daryl Thompson. We're talking about a guy with over 600 collegiate carries, averaging over 5.5 yards per carry. He's the king of yards after contact. He's the king of yards after first contact. He's not the biggest guy, the fastest guy, but he is a dang good running back, and he is going to be someone that if Minnesota fulfills their aspirations of getting to Indianapolis is going to be talking about a lot more than just the Big Ten West, but potentially Heisman aspirations.
And we talked about Daniel Jackson. You look at Dalen Wright. There was a guy that needed to step up in the absence of Chris Altman-Bell. It was Daniel Jackson. What kind of comfort does that now give Taryn Morgan going into this game versus Purdue?
Well, we talked about it last week. It's going to be a committee, and Daniel Jackson is going to be part of that committee. He sat out the first few games with an injury, but it was nice to get him going early. Most impressive stat last week in the passing game to me is 10 different wide receivers caught balls. I think it was 6 that had multiple catches. And just reading stuff coming out of Michigan State last week, how Michigan State was planning to defend Minnesota, I sat there in the press box at Spartan Stadium and said, Taryn Morgan might have a Purdue 2019 game here with efficiency. And Daniel Jackson was a big part of that. Contested catch on his first touchdown. Absolutely great route on the second one. They could have gone to the fade as well, is what they told me on the field. Everything was open for Daniel last week.
Yeah, and so when you think about Taryn Morgan's game, you think about Purdue now. We just saw their train of, I don't know what that was, a Boilermaker train with their bus. I mean, they have all the stops. This is a big deal to them to come here and play an undefeated Minnesota team. What can Purdue do, or what, like Jeff Braun made a comment that this is going to be his toughest matchup, and he's played Penn State.
Right.
What do you think about that?
I think he's probably right. I mean, you look at the September to remember that Minnesota just had, outscoring their opponents 183-24, and then you look at what Purdue has faced in Penn State and Syracuse in their 2 losses. I mean, Penn State is allegedly a top 12 team, and Minnesota's at 21. Now, I think that Aiden O'Connell is going to be playing today, is what we've seen from the early reports, and he is one of the best quarterbacks, if not the best in the Big Ten West. But it's going to come down to which one of these quarterbacks who I think are the 2 best in the Big Ten, Taryn Morgan and Aiden O'Connell, which one of them show up today? Because this is a huge game for Purdue. They're 2-2. They have 1 Big Ten loss already. And if you're going to be competing here in the West, this is a game that Jeff Brom's got to win. He's lost the last 4 against Minnesota. This is a gigantic game for both teams.
And I feel like you've done this before because you led me right to the next question. Minnesota's dominated Purdue. It has not been a competition. Not to overlook it because we don't want to do that. PJ would kill us if we overlook this team. But why has PJ been so dominant over this Purdue Boilermakers team?
Well, it's because they don't allow the explosive plays. They don't allow the 85-yard touchdowns, and that's what Purdue lives on. Now, they're going to get your yards. We were talking about it in the radio press box before I came down here. You talk about the Iowa game a year ago where Minnesota had 500 yards and ended up losing the game. Iowa had 75 and won. That was the Purdue game last year, except in reverse. The Gophers only had 200-some yards offensively, and 2 of them were on a couple of long Michael Brown-Stevens catches. Purdue, on the other hand, moved the ball last year, over 400 yards, but they keep them out of the end zone. That's what this defense is great at. They make an offense slowly move down the field. You might get 10, you might get 15, but you're not going to get 50 to the end zone, and they make Purdue finish drives. In the last few years, they haven't been able to do it, but it's a huge challenge, especially with O'Connell playing.
And if you look at the Gophers, their best defense has been their offense. 1,178 plays, which is number 1 in the Big Ten. But those more stats at you. 78.8% on third down. That's number 1 in the nation. You go over, you look at red zone TDs, 15. That's first in the nation. 23 red zone scores. That's third in the nation. 73 rushing first downs. That's first in the nation. Why? We know that this is what this team should be, and It's weird to talk about it like this, but are people still doubting what PJ Fleck has put together?
Maybe, but who cares? Because he's going to have the final word on that. And Jeff Brom certainly is, and I loved what he said. He had one of the great quotes about Gopher football. They should put it on the facility. They make you bleed, and if you don't stop the bleeding, it's a slow death. That is a perfect, graphic for 9:10 in the morning, but it's a perfect representation of what the Gophers want to do. And Jeff Brom said it the last few years, you have to get ahead of the Gophers. That's a big part of their success. Once they get a lead, they are able to shrink the game. They're able to keep the ball on offense. They're able to extend their drives, and they're able to limit the other team's opportunities offensively. So Jeff Brom knows exactly why they've struggled, because the Gophers have had the lead, they've kept them out of the end zone, and they have bled them to death for that Saturday morning cartoon version of it.
Well, you look even in the last 3 games of Minnesota versus Purdue. Minnesota has won by a touchdown in every single one of those games. It comes down to close games, and I look at the 2 games that it was close for Purdue outside of last week and their losses. Purdue is struggling to get it done in these close games. So Minnesota, while they haven't played in a close game yet, they've been undisciplined. Purdue, they lead the Big Ten in penalty yards per game. And then they have a kicker who is 2 of 4 on the season, is only 1 of 3 from 40 yards. So if you can be good in the red zone, which Minnesota's defense has been, again, Minnesota's starting defense is not allowed a touchdown this season. They've allowed 6 third down conversions on 41. You mentioned it, if you're getting off the field 86% of the time on third down, you're probably going to be winning a lot of football games. But the key today is once Purdue does get into the red zone, make them settle for field goals and not allow them to get touchdowns.
Well, coming up on the Gophers pregame show, we're going to talk about how the Gophers can slow down Purdue. And there is one guy they're going to have to slow down. We'll talk about him next, coming up on the Gophers pregame show. Look at that beautiful stadium. Welcome back to the Gopher pregame show, and look at the inside of the stadium. Players are out there warming up. It's a great day. It's homecoming. Gophers have scheduled Purdue. I know personally I don't like to be scheduled on homecoming, but Purdue is not overlooking Minnesota. They know it's their homecoming, and they want to spoil it. Every time you walk into somebody's stadium, your goal is to spoil anything they schedule, especially homecoming. But here's what Coach Brown had to say about that.
Well, this is a tremendous challenge because this team is really good. It'll be the best football team we played to date, in my opinion. They're hot. They're confident. No one's come close to them. They went to Michigan State, and it was a shutout until the last offensive play of Michigan State's game on just a go route down the sideline versus backups. So that's pretty daggone good. And I just think they, like I said, the sound running game, once you start to want to commit more guys, they're going to get you on a deep pass over the top. And if they are allowed to do that, then they're just going to continue to roll. And at the same time, people underestimate their defense. Their defense has been lights out, has shut people down. I think they've understand what they're being coached to do, and they've done a great job. So I think this is a quality football team that's playing at a high level that we're going to have to, really execute and, have a few things go our way in order to kind of get ahead of the 8 ball, because we're going to have to get ahead of the 8 ball in order to win the game.
Get it ahead of the 8 ball. I don't know how you do that on a football field, but I guess that's what he's telling his team. PJ Fleck rows the boat. He's playing pool. But JG, 187.8 yards per game this defense has given up, first in the Big Ten, one of the top in the nation. If you think about that, what Coach Brown brings that up, that this defense, don't overlook it, because everybody's talking about this offense, but he's saying don't overlook this defense. What is he in store for? How can he even get through this team?
Well, I think he's trying to figure that out. He knows, like I said, first segment, they have to somehow get ahead, because if the Gophers get ahead, they make it very difficult on everybody. And as I mentioned, this defense has been so good at making a team go 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 plays throughout the drive. But I was talking to Bernsey during the break, just listening to Jeff Brom. He knows his record against PJ Fleck. Trust me, his fan base probably reminds him of that. They came in the same year. He started out hot, beating Ohio State. He started out hot. With their season, PJ struggled a little bit. That is completely flipped. Almost reminds me a little bit of like the Scott Frost dynamic. These fan bases, you mentioned, do people give PJ enough respect? Probably not. Around the Big Ten, certainly the Big Ten West, you're on the message board life all the time, Bernsey.
Yeah.
You know what their fans are going. It's like, and there's PJ in Minneapolis just rowing the boat while we're paying our coach $6 million and we can't beat him.
And how has PJ gotten Jeff Brom's number so far?
Well, again, he's been so successful on the ground, and that's where we're going to find out today. Purdue's run defense against Power 5 opponents has actually been really good. You look at against Syracuse and against Penn State, Purdue's run defense against running backs is only allowing 3 yards a carry. That's really good. Mo Ibrahim and Trey Potts, Minnesota's starting 2 tailbacks, they're averaging over 6 yards a carry. So something has to give today, but if there is an offense in the Big Ten West that is built to come from behind, it's Jeff Brom's offense. In their last 3 games against Minnesota, Purdue's quarterback has thrown the ball 40 or more times in 2 of them. And last year in that monsoon in West Lafayette, Aiden O'Connell threw the ball 51 times. So even if Purdue gets down by 7 or 10 points, this is still an offense that is built to come from behind.
And this is what I'll say, Bernsey. 6 points a game. That's second in the Big Ten. 14.3% on third down for this defense. That's number 1 in the nation. They are getting off the field, as PJ Fleck would say. Why is this defense so good?
They're so good at all 3 levels, and we've been talking about it, on Gopher Illustrated, wherever that may be. You look at the Gopher defense, and it's like, there's a lot of good players, but where is the bad one? I mean, traditionally, there's always a couple players where you're like, which one of them can you attack? Well, you look at all 3 levels of this Gopher defense right now, they're all playing so well. I mean, you see Ryan Stapp come in here for the sack. There's so many different guys, and that's where if you stop the run on first and second down and you force these third and longs, more times than not against a collegiate offense, you're going to get off the field. And that's what Minnesota has done. Even last week in East Lansing, I think the starting defense was only on the field for 35, 38 plays. That's insane. Like I do, and in a normal game, a defense is on the field for 60 plays. So I think you just look at all 3 levels doing their job, and even on this forced fumble, you just have Justin Wally set an edge. You see Thomas Rush crash down the line of scrimmage, and he just makes an effort play. It doesn't have to be difficult. If you just do your job like everybody on this Gopher defense is right now, that's why the starting defense through 4 games has not given up a touchdown yet.
Yeah, and after the Michigan State game, Tony Dungy tweeted. You saw Kirk Herbstreit tweeted. Everybody was tweeting this Gophers team should be ranked and higher than 21. When you think about that, beating teams, that was the key to this. They now have to beat a Purdue team. What can they do this week to really vault themselves into the top 15?
Go 1-0 in the Purdue championship season. It's boring. That's what they said in 2019. That's how they're going to roll. And that's where people always say, okay, can this team now handle a little bit of success? It's a mature team. I think if they were all 18, 19 years old, checking out their Instagram, checking out their Twitter, they probably have an app I don't even know about as a 40-year-old man. They might listen to that noise a little bit more. This is a group that's been through it. We talked about it on the PJ Flex show. Tanner probably doesn't even know they're ranked.
No.
Mo probably doesn't even know they're ranked. Some of these defensive guys, they might know, but they don't really care, and they know the work that it took to get them in there. And they also know if they lose today or they drop a game that maybe they quote-unquote shouldn't, they're going right back out of the rankings like Michigan State did a couple of weeks ago. So I don't worry about the maturity of this group handling the noise. But make no mistake, the noise has gotten a lot louder this week.
Well, stick around. There is a lot more to come on the Gophers pregame show. And as I said, I'm going to pay off the tease. We're going to talk about Purdue at some point, and we have to talk about the guy they have to stop on the other side of the ball. That's Charlie Jones, and we'll talk about him next coming up on the Gopher pregame show. Welcome back to the Gopher pregame show. I am your host, Ron Johnson. Of course, Justin Garr, Ryan Burns, here for another segment with me as we take a look inside the state. I mean, look at that. And it's not striped out yet, JG. I know you've been the pusher for the stripes. What do you think the stripes are going to look like? Are the fans going to get this done?
You know, I actually think they're going to do a representative job. It's always, I remember Richard Pitino always joked about it. He says, we're doing a blackout at Williams Arena. Doesn't mean we're going to be Purdue. It doesn't mean we're going to be Iowa. It just means wear a different shirt. Now, I will give fans credit because gold is much harder to come by than is maroon. So they've had a little bit of an issue getting gold, but I appreciate everybody's, you got to give it a shot. You got to give it a try. we talked about it at the top. That's what big-time college environments do. Let's work to make this a big-time college environment.
Well, I like that word representative. If we're going to pick a representative of Purdue football, is Aiden O'Connell. 1,000 yards. He's one of the top quarterbacks for passing in a game per game in the NCAA. 333 yards a game. He's only played 3 games because of the injury.
Yep.
What should we expect from him today?
Well, he's going to try to give it a go. Again, he had a rib injury last week that he missed the Florida Atlantic game with, but he is, I think without question, a top 2 quarterback in the Big Ten West and arguably the best one. What he's done in this Jeff Brom offense, he's incredibly decisive. He knows exactly where to go with the football, and you're going to see him throw it a lot to Charlie Jones today. I believe that Charlie Jones and Aiden O'Connell, Charlie Jones is over 42% of Purdue's receiving yards, and again, we're talking about a team that throws the ball 40-plus times a game. This is one of the most prolific passing offenses in the Big Ten. Jeff Brom is one of the most creative minds in all of the Big Ten offensively. They are going to target Charlie Jones early and often, but Aiden O'Connell is very decisive. He's very accurate, but Minnesota's had his number the last couple of years. Minnesota has won the turnover battle in each of the last 3 games, and that's going to have to continue today.
Yeah, and when I was a Gopher, we played Drew Brees. We played, I forgot the other guy's name, but we played against Purdue, and they were always 500-something yards passing. Kyle Orton, 400-something yards passing. Similar offense now. Charlie Jones, when you watch his routes, I hate to say this, people, cover your kids' ears. I was aroused. I was aroused watching the amount of route tree options that he has within this offense and the amount of times he gets the ball. 41 catches, one of the top receivers in the nation. JG, how do they slow Charlie Jones down?
I don't think you do. I think they've always had a guy, whether it was Rondale Moore, whether it was David Bell last year or Charlie Jones this year, easily the happiest transfer in America. He leaves Iowa City where they can't throw the ball, comes to Purdue. I think he had like 10 catches in his first game. He's a stud. I mean, the Gophers saw that last year in Iowa City with the deep pass that he caught, with the punt return abilities that he has. There can't be anybody that's happier. The transfer portal exists than Charlie Jones. And Purdue just makes it look so easy. I remember being there last year. Gophers had them pinned, I think, inside the 5-yard line. Great punt by Mark Crawford. You think, okay, good situation here for the defense. One play later, they're at midfield because they just snap it back. Aiden O'Connell looks around, throws it to the midfield. David Bell catches it, and all of a sudden it's a 50-yard gain. That's how Purdue rolls. And Jeff Brom doesn't care really about turnovers. He doesn't like them, but he says, look, we throw the ball a lot. Some bad things are going to happen when you throw the ball a lot. We just have to live with it.
Well, historically, too, you look at Joe Rossi against Jeff Brom's defense, or Jeff Brom's offense, I should say. The wide receiver one has gotten his.
Yeah.
So whether it was David Bell or Rondale Moore, it's going to be someone that they're going to try to limit him, but historically they haven't been able to do it with receptions or yards. So that's where it's going to come down to the red zone. But Charlie Jones leads the Big Ten in contested catches with 8. So they're going to throw it to him early and often. He's on the outside a lot. So Justin Wally and Terrell Smith, I think Pro Football Focus has them as 2 of the top-graded corners in America in coverage. They're going to have their toughest test of the season today with Charlie Jones on their hands.
Receptions and yards they've gotten, but not touchdowns.
Yes.
And that's the key. I mean, that is the absolute key.
And speaking of touchdowns, the run game. They have to figure out a way to run the ball because they pass to run. They're opposite of what P.J. Fleck does. When you look at this run game, and you talked about Joe Rossi, how can Joe Rossi make sure not to get gashed in the running game? Because that's when the game goes and you start to bleed out. I mean, let's use Jeff Brom's words.
Yeah, and that's where Joe Rossi talked about it this week, where Purdue only wants to run the ball just enough that you have to honor it. And that's where Minnesota's been one of the best run defenses in America the last few seasons. They continue to be that here in 2022. Purdue's starting running back, King Doru, is going to be out in this game. So that's where it's going to be. If you only put 6 in the box and they have 6 on offense there, Minnesota's going to have to win their one-on-one matchups because Purdue's going to want to throw it. But if you can't allow them, like the Florida Atlantic did last week, to run for over 100-something yards, I have a hard time believing that Purdue's going to have that amount of success today. But to your point, if you're going to get off the field on 3rd down like they continue to, stop the run on early downs, force Purdue to get in these 2nd and 3rd and long situations, you're probably going to have a lot more success.
It was described to me earlier this week as they don't have a good offensive line and they know it. So they don't try to. I mean, if they ran the ball against Penn State, they probably win that game. If they ran the ball here in 2020 a few more times in the COVID year, they probably beat Minnesota here. They go away from it so much. I think Brom just likes to throw it. He's an old QB. You should appreciate that.
Well, Justin Wiley has his work cut out for him and Terrell Smith because they have to deal with Charlie Jones today. Joe Rossi as well has his work cut out for him. But up next, I get to sit down with the quarterback Taryn Morgan. Best one-on-one I think I've ever done. Why? I might have gotten myself back into the record books with another touchdown from Taryn Morgan. It's the last one I'll ever catch. Maybe I'll get another one if P.J. Fleck lets me dress up today, but stay tuned for that. We're back on the Gopher pregame show. I'm your host, Ron Johnson. Coming up later, you'll see we got Karan Riley and Jeff Wall joining me, former Gopher Karan Riley, sack leader Karan Riley. But I got a chance to sit down with Gophers quarterback Taryn Morgan, one of the most interesting quarterbacks I've ever had a chance to sit down with. Why? Because this is his 6th year. He's married, and just like me, we both lost our dads. And so we talk a little bit about that right here with Taryn Morgan. So Taryn Morgan, Gophers quarterback. I mean, I feel like you've been here forever.
Long time.
Like, it feels
Long
like you've
time,
been here
bro.
forever.
Yeah.
So let's start off with this. PJ Fleck, you've been here and it's like couples. They say when people get married, we'll talk about that later.
Yeah.
When people get married, couples start to act like each other, start to look alike. I'm pretty sure you've seen that on Twitter and Instagram and stuff, and people talk about those jokes.
Yeah.
But you and PJ are starting to I mean, you guys dressed alike today. You're starting to what's gone into that where you literally, not on purpose, but you guys are starting to kind of look alike. I mean, he's got the bald head now.
Yeah, I mean, definitely, the bald head is definitely you get all kinds of jokes and all kinds of things like that. So it definitely makes it look similar. But I mean, he's got good style too. He's always fresh. So if I get confused for that, I'll take it any day of the week. But yeah, man, it's been a long time where I've got confused for coach. It happens, if not daily, weekly for sure. So I'm just kind of used to it at this point and just kind of laugh it off and tell dudes, nah, I'm Tanner, I'm not coach.
So have recruits gotten you confused when they show up?
Yeah, actually. There's been a couple times where dudes have thought I was either coach or a coach. So I just kind of laughed that off. But I don't think any of those guys actually came here. So,
So marriage, you're married 3 months in. That's not normal for college football.
No,
so how has that been as a college student, athlete, and being married?
Man, it's been a blessing for sure. It's different, but for me and my wife, it was something that we were ready for that step in our relationship, and I'm super thankful for her and everything she does for me and for us and for our relationship. She sacrifices a lot. I have a lot on my plate, and she's very understanding of that, and so. That helps me play better, definitely, and it's just awesome to get done watching film and then go home and see my wife. So,
I mean, because you have a bunch of 18-year-old
right? Yeah,
players.
it's totally different spectrum.
Right.
Guys who are just getting to college and figuring their way out and things like that. So, kind of my old head wisdom.
Yeah, and so we both. Went through stuff. My dad passed away a couple years ago. I still have tweets from your dad in my DMs that I think I told you that I've never released them. But, I loved his, when you were battling for the #1 quarterback spot, and I would make comments. I didn't know he was paying attention, but he would send me a DM hey, keep this in mind and blah, blah. And yeah, you were right. Tanner did this. He loved you. Yeah. He loved doing sports with you.
No doubt.
I've been there with my dad. And so how has that transition been and not trying to cry, because I'm trying to hold it back, but, moving forward, because you're a lot younger than I am. I was 38, you're still in your 20s. How has that been not having your dad around?
Yeah, I think it's a long process, right? And learning how to deal with those emotions in a healthy way, not bury things in, because football was a huge part of me and my dad's relationship. So it was hard at times. There'd be moments where I just wanted to call him and tell him about things, or where I'd miss him calling me every day or bugging me about, what's this going on? And I'm like, Dad, where I'd be like, Dad, relax, just calm down, you know what I mean? So, you definitely miss those moments, but it's just allowed me, as I've worked through kind of that process with, so many great teammates and coaches to be able to talk to it, it's allowed me to kind of just really cherish the moments that I had with him. And I still think about all the lessons that he taught me, especially in the last year of his life when his faith really grew, and he got really close with the Lord, and just kind of those lessons that he taught me, I say those in my head all the time. Yeah.
When you look at Chris Altman-Bell, huge injury, Mo Ibrahim the year before, you've been here for both of those. How have you helped Chris to understand it's not over, and then how have you moved on with your now new receiving group? Yeah,
well, I think Chris is in that, is a part of both of those conversations, right? Obviously with himself and he's a huge part of this team still, and just kind of talking through things, and he's got a long road to recovery, and he's going to grind every day, and just kind of letting him know that I'm always there for him, because that's my brother. I mean, I've known him for a long time, and I always want to see him succeed in everything that he does, and so he still has a really, really bright future ahead of him in sports and just in life too. And then in terms of with the other guys, we've gotten a lot of reps together too, and I think Chris is vital in that. Kind of he sets the standard of that room of, you know, how hard they play. And those guys are taking that on, and we saw that last week. And so it's awesome to see Chris's leadership on the field, even though he's not on the field, if that makes sense.
I'm going to put you in the red zone.
Okay, cool.
I want to get your reaction as we go. So, Tanner.
Yes, sir.
I got a nasty split. We're in the red zone.
Yep.
You've had an 80-yard drive. Camera's here. Just give me some facial expressions when you know you got Dalen Wright or somebody like Mick, 6'3", 230 pounds. You got a 5'8" DB manned up. You see everybody. You got blitz coming because you see it fully. What kind of facial expressions are you trying to let your receiver know, like, hey, it's coming your way?
Yeah, you know, I think there's, you know, one, obviously I got to check the defense, check the coverage, make sure I got the right thing. But as soon as I check the matchup, you know, I'm looking over at him and I'm just giving him like let's go to work. You know what I mean? That I'm going to throw one out there and go make a play.
And if you see, so if I'm a DB,
right,
and I'm kind of watching you too, I'm not even watching it, like what is your poker face now, like not to give it away? Because now you know the call, you know it's all go.
You know, the big thing is just like constantly moving your head. You know, if I see him and he's looking at me, you know, and that's like the game within the game. Throughout the whole drive, you might be looking at him and it might be a run to the left and you're like, you know, whatever it may be. It's just playing those games with those guys so they can't cue in on what I'm looking at, what I'm looking for. But, you know, I might look at him and smile. I might look at him, continue to look long over here, catch it, and just come right to it. You know what I mean? But if I have a feeling that he's kind of keying in on me, then I'm not gonna necessarily look at him or look at my receiver that I'm going to all the time. I gotta keep them on their toes so that they don't know I'm going right at them.
All right, well, let's get one fade in then. Fade stop.
You want fade stop or fade?
Just give me a fade. You can give me a fade.
Right. So go. Still got it.
That's how Taryn Morgan does it.
Still got it.
That should be 32 touchdowns now. I think I need my records back. Appreciate you for joining me, man.
Yeah, thank you.
Have a good game.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, again, that was one of the funnest one-on-ones I've had with Taryn Morgan. Definitely a great story about his dad, his mom. Losing his dad, though, you know, when you're a senior in college, been your 6th year, you're married now, you lost your dad. When you think about that, what is Taryn Morgan doing to kind of keep it? Because he said he doesn't keep it all in, and I think that's the key. He's letting it out. He's crying, whatever he needs to do. How important is that, Jeff?
Oh, it's absolutely important. I mean, it's an emotional deal. I lost my dad 6 years ago, and I still think about him every day to this point. I mean, he's really matured over the course of the last 6 years. When you look at when he first came in, he lit it up in 2019, and he went through that adversity of both COVID and losing his dad. He's come back this year. Personally, I think he might be the best quarterback on the field today.
And again, I'm glad you said that, because you think about, he's selfless. It's not about him, it's about the team. When you look at Aiden O'Connell, one of the top quarterbacks in the country for Purdue. Purdue's always had that, though. Drew Brees, you go back to years and years, they always have a good offense. He's going up against the #1 quarterback in the college football, #2, I think, 333 yards per game. But Tanner's not letting that noise get to him. He said, I'm going to play my game. I'm not here to beat Aiden O'Connell. I'm here to make my team better. Why has he taken this roll the boat culture and really run with it?
Well, like you said, I think it's about being selfless. We saw what happened last week. Everyone going into that Michigan State game, no Chris Ottman-Bell. What do you do when your security blanket's out? You rely and you put that trust in other receivers in that offense. You saw what Michael Brown-Stevens, Dalen Wright, all those guys, what they did last week. I think you had 4 guys with multiple catch games. You had Daniel Jackson with 2 touchdowns. He just really did an excellent job of spreading it out and trusting his guys.
Well, kickoff's going to be at 11 o'clock today. Gophers versus Purdue. It is Gopher homecoming. I have homecoming memories. Karan Riley has homecoming memories. So when we come back next, we're going to sit down and talk to Karan Riley, former Gopher, former NFL DN, linebacker, Atlanta Falcons, Chicago Bears. Stay tuned for that. Look at him. Welcome back to the Gopher Pregame Show. I'm your host, Ron Johnson, and we take a look inside the stadium. I mean, look at those students. They are ready to go. That student section is going to be rocking. They are going to be going. I am just glad to see that they got the memo and they're wearing gold, because I'm guessing that entire student section has to wear gold today. So I'm glad at least they got the assignment. We all know that TikTok. I understood the assignment. We know the students know how to follow assignments. We'll see if the fans can follow the assignment. We don't know if they can, but we'll see today. As I said, I got Karan Riley joining me. Karan Riley, I'm gonna tell a quick story. Karan Riley and I came into Minnesota together, but we graduated high school at different years. So we went to high school together, played high school football together. I got a million stories. I can't tell half of them on TV. But Karan Riley, I remember coming to Minnesota. Glenn Mason told me he had a surprise for me on my recruiting trip. I see his dad, and I thought that was Dr. J. So I'm thinking like, oh, okay, Dr. J is coming to recruit me to come to Minnesota. Well, no, it was Karan's dad, because he looks like Dr. J. Just Google it, look him up. And come to find out, Karan, who had already committed to SMU, was transferring or considering transferring to Minnesota, and he both and I came. We said, you know what, that we can change this dynamic here. We can make this a winning team. And within 2 years, we were in a bowl game, won 8 games, beat Penn State, beat Ohio State the next year. So Karan Riley, I want to thank you for joining me. And for those that don't know also too, he's married to Lavita Alizé Jenkins. So if you guys don't know, check that out. Like, she was on the, what was that, Cedric Entertainer show with Steve Harvey, the Steve Harvey show. Oh, Karan married her. So that's, I think, his biggest accomplishment, finding somebody that wanted to marry him that was better than him. Because finding that is tough for Karan. But Karan, I want to thank you for joining me, man. Let's jump out there, man. Like, we had some huge games here in Minnesota. What was one of your favorite memories playing here in Minnesota?
Man, I got to say, first and foremost, I mean, the campus looks beautiful, and I can't remember any. This is all new to me, right?
It is new,
The biggest memories I would have to say was all the big games, man. At that time we played, we had Ron Daines, we had the LeVar Arringtons, we had some marquee names at the time. So anytime we got to put ourselves up against those guys, those programs, I loved it. The Penn State game, at Penn State, we upset the world. We took Ron Dayne out of the Heisman watch single-handedly. Those are the memories I have, because being a Minnesota Gopher, we always was the underdog for such a long time. Every time we walked in, people always said, oh, that's going to be a W on the schedule. We changed that narrative, and I'm thankful for that. And as you can see, it's continuing on. So I'm thankful, and again, those memories are the ones I hold on to.
Yeah, we talked about record books. Mo Ibrahim now has the record for touchdowns in a career. You had a record for sacks.
No, I still have it.
Or you still have
No, I still have that record, and I'm putting my campaign together now for the Hall of Fame next year. Go ahead and get it going. Go ahead.
So you have the record for sacks, but what game can you look back to and say, man, I really had one of my best sack performances in my career?
Man, I mean, again, the big games, bro. The Penn State game, I got the hit point in the first half, came back out, got the sack to seal it. Then you came back and got the big touchdown to win it overtime. Iowa, we was threatening not to make the bowl that second year. After my senior year, I got 4 sacks in that game to take us to the bowl. That big goal line stop we had in Iowa. You had another brilliant game. I mean, those are the games that stand out to me. Again, it's just playing those moments, man.
Ron, you and I were talking a little bit off camera before the segment here. I've been following this team for 30 plus years. I've never seen it this far into a season where the defense and the offense are both ranked in the top 5 in the country in total yardage. Just from a player's perspective, what can that do for a team's confidence?
It's everything. I mean, I remember very, very, very well the time we got ranked to be 13 at one point. Now, we were running around thinking we had made it, right? But being ranked top 5 in both categories is huge. And I think that does so much for not only the program's confidence in the now, it starts to build a new legacy and a new expectation for the program. Now, we're not the underdogs anymore, guys. When you come to Minnesota, you expect to win now. You expect to contribute to the national narrative of big-time teams.
Right, and the big talker today, obviously, Aiden O'Connell is back healthy. I mean, we went through the stats a minute ago. You were a stud DN linebacker hybrid. How do you stop Aiden O'Connell today?
I hit him as much as possible. Right now I'm getting a little excited just by the fact that Ron told me they throw 70% of the time. Man, I would have on my track shoes. I'll probably put on the smallest shoulder pads I can find, and it would get ugly. I mean, you have to put bodies on quarterbacks like that. Even if you don't sack them, you got to let them know you're out there, and that gets them off. Because all you want to do is speed up their clock a little bit, and because it's all timing for those guys. And if you can get them off there, moving their feet and thinking about you hitting them and just constantly being there. I used to run past me. If I got close, I would whisper to them, "Your day is coming. Your moment's coming," and eventually they come.
And last one, man, you're on BET's Black Hamptons now.
Yes.
How has that project been transferring from football or transitioning from football into being an actor?
It was. I was talking off camera, and it was fairly easy because you know me. I wanted to be an actor before I even wanted to be an athlete. So when I was in the NFL, I trained in my off seasons for acting classes, and the transition was fairly easy, man. When I left football, I walked right on the sets and started working my next career, and I'm blessed to have such a great career at this point. Like I told him earlier, I've now been an actor and a producer and director for 14 years, way longer than my pro football career. So I think I picked the right move.
Yeah. Well, picking the right move, we're going to have to pick the right keys to victory in this game. The matchup meter is coming up next. Stick around. There'll be more on the Gophers pregame show.
Nice segue.
Welcome back to the Gopher pregame show. We're bringing it home now. And of course, like I said, there's no way to figure out victory without the keys to victory. We're going to start with you, Jeff. What do the Gophers have to do to win the game today?
Well, we touched on it a little bit earlier, and I'm sure it was talked about throughout the show, but my key is Taryn Morgan. I mean, you're talking about the Big Ten co-offensive player of the week last week without his top receiver, 268 yards, 3 touchdowns. Through 4 starts, he's got 7 touchdowns and 1 interception. He's completing 77% of his passes. He's trusting his players to make plays for him. My key is do exactly what you did against Michigan State last week. Get out to a fast start, get that ball down the field, put some points up, and make a statement. That's my key today.
Karam?
You have to be who you say you are today. Minnesota's top 5 in all categories on offense and defense, number 1 on defense. So the defense has to be number 1 today. Like I said, the rubber has to meet the road today for Minnesota. They have to show they are who they say they are today. It's going to be a physical game. You have to get at it, and this is what we all want. This is all we want to be as Minnesota players and Minnesota fans. We're here. It's time to show up or show out.
Well, my key, I've gone all over the place with this one, but my key today for the Gophers is, 1, it's homecoming, so they have to dominate. We're going to start there. You have to dominate on homecoming, but don't get into a shootout with a team like Purdue. That's what Aiden O'Connell wants. Like, I remember Karan knows this, Drew Brees games. You cannot get into a shootout with Purdue. Jeff Brom said this, do not let the Gophers get ahead because they will slice and dice and bleed you out till you die. It's a little bit graphic for a Saturday, but that's what Jeff Brom said. His words, not mine, but that's what they have to do. You do not want to get into a shootout with this team. Bleed the clock out, run the ball. You have the #1 running back in college football with Mo Ibrahim. He is probably going to be the Doak Walker Award winner. You have to get him into this game and then throw the ball to Daniel Jackson, to your tight ends, and let Taryn Morgan do what he does. But we have to make sure we announce and make sure we let you know the Fox Bet Super 6. Please go out there. There's 6 games you can pick. You can go out there and win your money. You can pick the games, the spread, the teams. You have to be able to, I can't read the thing. You want to download the app on the Fox app. It's the Bet Super 6. We know it. Pick your 2 teams. I'm not going to pick Gophers Purdue, but you can go out there and pick Michigan, Iowa if you want. I'm going to give you a tip. I was going to get killed by Michigan, so there's an easy way to win some of that money. We know Terry Bradshaw likes to give his money away. Fox loves to give it away. Make sure you download that app. But coming up now, we got the matchup meter, and this is one of the easiest. It's going to be pretty easy up until Penn State. I hate to say this, people, but my matchup meter for the day, I am going to start off with the Gophers offense. This is why. Taryn Morgan, to me, is a better player. You look at what he's done so far. Aiden O'Connell's dealing with injury, and that's the big difference. Like Karan said, if they can hit him in the ribs, get him hit early, he's going to not want to stand in the pocket for too much longer. Defense, I got to give it to the Gophers. Joe Rossi is doing an awesome job. Like I said, 187 yards per game, 6 points per game. These are all top in the nation stats, people. This is not just the Big Ten. This is the #1. 14.3% on third down. That's #1 in the nation. That's better than Alabama. That's better than Tennessee and Georgia. So they are getting off the field on third down. Coach, I got to give it to PJ. He's beaten Jeff Brom 4 out of the last 5 times. He's dominated him. They have not beaten the Gophers in Huntington Bank Stadium. And then also, when I look at this X Factor, I will give Purdue the nod on the X Factor. Why? Because they have no pressure today. They're walking into this stadium, and they're like, you know what? It's an easy Saturday morning. If we lose, we were supposed to lose. This is the number 21 team in the nation. Tony Dungy said it. They should be ranked higher. But this is the number 21 team ranked in the nation. So if Purdue loses, nobody cares. So Jeff Brom is going to want to win this game, and there's no pressure on him if he loses. He knows that his job's not in jeopardy like Nebraska's head coach Scott Frost, who lost his job to not winning games. Jeff Brom has no issues there with security. Penn State, Mels Tucker, he lost to Minnesota. He has no issues. I mean, what's next? Ohio State? That's the next one I'm worried about, but I'm not going to jump too far ahead of that. I just brought that up. The Big Ten championship game, we don't want to go too far, but Ohio State and Minnesota are the odds-on favorites right now. Minnesota has the best favorites out of 6 teams to go to the national play-in. There's only 6 teams. There's Georgia, Alabama, I forgot the other 4, but Minnesota's one of the 6 with the best odds. What do you think about that?
Well, I'm going to steal a note out of Coach Fleck's book. I'm focusing on today. All the talk last week was you didn't play anybody in the non-conference.
Yep.
You dominated those games. What do? They go out and they crush Michigan State.
Yep.
Monday morning, they're in the national polls, both of them. So my response now is, what do you do with that this week? You're 4-0. It's homecoming. You have a bye next week. How do you respond from that first Big Ten win? That's my thing.
Yeah, and I think you just, like you said, you have to continue being consistent. It starts today. You have to take care of business today, and everything else takes care of itself. But you can't look too far ahead, like you said. You want to stay in the moment, because we had the same situation in the year we went to the bowl, trying to keep everything right in front of us and not worry about too far ahead, because that can be a disaster in these kind of situations. So play the game you have, dominate that game, and get to the next one, and we'll see at the end. And hopefully they have the same history with Ohio State we did.
And this is the thing about Karan Riley. When I saw him at Penn State, he had tape on his wrist. He had 600 Benz V8 written on his wrist. That's the kind of player he was. But when you see that student section, Karan, they come out the tunnel right by the students. How excited. I know you'd have done something crazy, but how excited would you have been walking out that tunnel knowing all the students are right there?
Well, you remember me. I have Superman theme music play every time I got a sack. So imagine if I had all of this. I would have probably finagled some kind of flyover with the Air Force or something. I'd have had something. I definitely would have had some smoke. You know what I'm saying? I definitely would have had some smoke. You know what I'm saying? I love the smoke and light show, so that's probably what I'd have led for.
Well, we know PJ's he wants all the smoke. He's coming out the tunnel today with the smoke. I'm excited to be on the field for this one, because I know this pregame is gonna be nuts. The fans are here, it's packed, all the coffee shops are packed, Buffalo Wild Wings is packed. We wanna thank Unreal for giving us the quarter zips for today. We love the gear. Stay around for kickoff at 11 a.m. Gophers Purdue. I predict Gophers are going to win this one.